Namaskar, Sasrikal, Vanakkam and Assalamu Alaikum. This is Dr. Abdul Karim Farooqi, currently working as an intern in Mangalore. Hearty congratulations to you all on qualifying your NEET examination and securing seats in such prestigious medical universities. So here is a video for you all for referring to what are the textbooks you are going to need in your first year MBBS. So basically we can divide the textbooks which you are going to study in first year, rather in all the years, in two different categories. So the categories would be student friendly textbooks and international textbooks which are a little difficult to understand. So these are international textbooks which are usually written by international authors, and it becomes little difficult for us as an undergraduate of first year to understand such textbooks. However, there are some other textbooks written by Indian author which is very good for our vocabulary, and we can understand all those textbooks very well. Okay, so what are the subjects you are going to study in first year MBBS? So there are three major subjects you are going to study in your first year MBBS. The first one is anatomy, followed by physiology and biochemistry. Now first let's talk about the textbooks which are required for the subject anatomy. Now, see, there are two major textbooks which are sold in India. These are the two textbooks which I myself had read in first year MBBS. So the two textbooks, the traditional one which is being running from a long time is called as B.D. Chaurasia's Textbook of Anatomy. So I have read this book, as well as there is another book which is called as Vishram Singh's Textbook of Anatomy. Okay. So first I would like to show you the textbooks. This is the textbook of Vishram Singh and this is the textbook of B.D. Chaurasia. Okay. So I'll tell you the classifications which are there in anatomy. So the first thing what we are going to read is called as the general anatomy. Okay. The next thing what we are going to read here is called as the upper limb and thorax. So this is the Vishram Singh's textbook of upper limb and thorax. Followed by the next textbook, that is Vishram Singh's textbook of abdomen and lower limb. Okay. Followed by the next textbook, that is the Vishram Singh's textbook of head and neck. And the last textbook for the subject anatomy, it is textbook of clinical neuroanatomy by Dr. Vishram Singh. Okay. So this is the textbook which I personally have read for the entire year, and I found this book to be really crisp and beautifully written for an undergraduate level, and it makes the topic very easy to understand. Apart from that, the diagrams in this book is absolutely beautiful, and drawing these diagrams will fetch you much more marks in your university exams. Okay. There is another textbook of anatomy which is written by Dr. Chaurasia. So it is called as the B.D. Chaurasia's Textbook of Anatomy. I have read this textbook as well, but there were some pros and cons which I would like to discuss with you people. The thing is, this textbook is very beautifully written. However, the sentences are not such properly framed for an undergraduate to understand it. Now, you would be habituated to reading NCERT. So this book would be somewhere difficult for you. Why? Because the things in this are written in paragraph wise. Okay. However, the things which are there in Vishram Singh, it is written very beautifully point wise. So you will find it very easy to write your answers in university exam. So personally, I would recommend all of you to absolutely refer Vishram Singh's textbook of anatomy for your first year anatomy. Okay. Now there are another two subjects which are there in first year under anatomy, but however it is beautifully neglected by everyone. These are the subjects which are read in the last moment. So what are those two subjects? It is clinical embryology and clinical histology. So what are the textbook you are going to follow? See, all over India, this is the most standard and absolutely the student friendly textbook which is being used by maximum students. What is it? It is, first I'll tell you, it is the Inderbir Singh's of Human Embryology. The diagrams in this textbook are absolutely beautifully done. You can see the diagrams are so beautiful that you can just draw these diagrams directly in your university exams. Okay. So this is the subject of human embryology. The continuation of embryology would be read in obstetrics and gynecology in your final year. Okay. Followed by the next subject, that is your human histology. Okay. This is the Inderbir's textbook of human histology. So histology is the subject which is going to deal with all the parts of the human body under the microscope. So you are going to read everything which is at the microscopic level. And this book also, absolutely, it is really good for your paper 2 anatomy, because obviously paper 1 and paper 2 both. Paper 1 has general anatomy and paper 2 has systemic histology. So I'll show you some diagrams here. The diagrams are really beautiful, which can be directly drawn in your university exams. Okay. So this is the textbook of human histology. Okay. Now, the most important part why students do not understand the subject anatomy, it is because you are not able to visualize anything. If you are going to see it in the cadaver, well and good. But there are certain things which cannot be read and has to be visualized. So there is something add upon to all of these textbooks which will help you to visualize the anatomical structures better, and that is something called as an atlas. So I have the atlas here. This is called as Nectar's Atlas of Human Anatomy. So this is a atlas which has a lot of images which are very realistic to what you are actually going to see in a cadaver. So I would like to show you some beautifully drawn diagrams here. For example, this is a coronal section of your diaphragm. So you can see such beautiful markings. There are each and every minute details given here. And these are very realistic diagrams. These are the real images which you are actually going to see when you are going to operate on a patient in the future. So this in brief was everything about anatomy. So personally, I would like to suggest you to stick to one textbook. Do not keep changing textbooks. And I would certainly tell you to read Dr. Vishram Singh's textbook of General Anatomy. Upon that, there are few people who do not read the entire year at all, and they would just like to start 2 months before the exam and try to finish the portions. So there should be some solution to that, isn't it? So the solution for that is Vishram Singh's textbook again. Now there would be some of you who would be reading the subject anatomy just before your exam, isn't it? So what is the solution for that? Absolutely, there are people who have written textbooks which can even be read 2 or 2.5 months before the exam, and you can certainly get good marks. Many of my batchmates have absolutely read those books and they have got beautiful marks in anatomy. So what is the solution for that? It is called as the Selective Textbook of Anatomy by Vishram Singh. So this is actually a textbook which has all the important university questions which have been solved in that. So it is like a gist of the entire textbook of anatomy. So this textbook can also be read before maybe 2.5 months, 3 months before the exam, and you can certainly do very well in this subject. Now coming to the next subject, that is physiology. So what exactly is physiology? See, physiology is the branch of medical science which deals with the normal functioning of the human body and the various systems which are present in the human body. Okay, so as I told, I'll divide the video into two parts, that is international books and the student friendly textbooks. So the most popular international textbook of physiology which is read in India, it is a textbook of physiology written by Mr. Guyton and Hall. So this is the textbook of Guyton and Hall, Medical Physiology. Okay, this is a very beautiful textbook, but however there are few pros and cons. I personally, what I had faced in my first year, I'd like to share with you people. So it is a textbook which will make your concepts very crisp. You can understand the topics very well, but production of answers in exam would become very difficult, isn't it? So I would highly recommend to you people to read this textbook if you want to increase your knowledge, but to write answers in exam, it becomes a very hectic task. So what is the solution for that? I had actually used this textbook until my second internals, and then I tried to find out that although I would be knowing the concepts, but it becomes very difficult for me to produce the answers in exam. So for that you need some textbook which has a very crisp and point-wise given statements of the same textbook. So the textbook of choice which I used from my second internals and I scored very good marks in physiology was the textbook of Physiology by Mr. G.K. Pal. So this is the textbook of Medical Physiology by Mr. G.K. Pal. This book might look hefty to you, but there has to be selective reading. I would tell you what is meant by selective reading at the end of this video. But however, this is the textbook of Medical Physiology by Mr. G.K. Pal. What I would like to tell you about this book is that there are very beautiful diagrams, flow charts. The most important thing which many people miss in physiology exams, because of which they do not get marks in exam, are the flow charts. Flow charts are absolute necessity in physiology exams. So you can see Mr. G.K. Pal has given such beautiful flow charts here. Okay. Apart from that, you can see that there are such beautiful graphs given here. Just imagine drawing these graphs, drawing these charts in your exams, and then you can challenge me if anyone is going to cut your marks in exams. Okay, so this is the textbook of Medical Physiology by G.K. Pal. Coming to the next textbook, it is the textbook of Physiology by Dr. A.K. Jain. So here are the two textbooks. This is the part 1 and this is the part 2 of A.K. Jain's textbook of physiology. So for me, this was a very much simpler version of GK Pal's textbook of physiology. It looks like as if the same statements of that textbook have been taken here with flowcharts and diagrams. But according to my experience, the content given in this textbook would not be sufficient for you to get university ranks. But however, if you want to pass with good marks, this textbook is an absolute prize for you. Okay, so this is about the textbooks of physiology. So I had mentioned that there would be two sections. One was the international textbook by Guyton and Hall, and apart from that, the Indian textbooks, that is the textbook of physiology by G.K. Pal and A.K. Jain. My personal preference to you will be choose the textbook of G.K. Pal. Coming to the practical version of physiology. So which is the textbook of choice for that? It is the textbook of practical physiology, again by Dr. G.K. Pal. I would highly recommend all of you to read this textbook of practical physiology. It is so because there are so many concepts given in this textbook which can be directly used while studying general medicine in final year. So all the practical aspects what you are going to read here, that is your clinical examinations of your CVS, RS, respiratory system, your CNS, all of these things are going to be repeating. The normal things what you're going to read here will be absolutely repeating in your final year. So I would highly recommend all of you to buy this textbook of physiology and continue reading practical physiology from textbook of G.K. Pal. Coming to the last subject of first year MBBS, that is the subject of biochemistry. So what is biochemistry? See, biochemistry is a branch of the medical science that deals with the chemical processes, the substances which take place in the human body. So personally, I feel that this is the most neglected subject of first year. Whenever you approach a first year MBBS student and you ask them, what are you studying? They would say, I am studying the mandible, I am studying the mandibular nerve, I am studying the brain. So for them, it becomes that anatomy is the only subject for them. But it's a sincere request from my side not to neglect the subject biochemistry, as this is the basis of all the clinical and laboratory investigations what you are going to write for your patients in your final year subjects like general medicine, general surgery, OBG and pediatrics. So now talking about the textbooks, as I had mentioned, student-friendly textbooks and very student-friendly textbooks, and obviously little textbooks which are little difficult to understand. So talking about the textbook which is little difficult to understand in the subject biochemistry is the textbook of biochemistry by Dr. Vasudevan. So this is the textbook of biochemistry by Vasudevan. See, this is a very good book, but the only problem what I felt in this book was that things are given in a paragraph wise. Okay, so things which are supposed to be in the form of points are there in the next textbook of biochemistry. So I have read this book, few chapters in this, but I did not like this book at all. I would recommend you to read the next textbook of biochemistry, that is the textbook of Satyanarayan. Okay, so this is the textbook of Satyanarayan. These books give everything in point wise. There are beautiful diagrams, beautiful flow charts, and things have been made much easier. There are a lot of mnemonics from which you can remember your topics, and you will find correlation, because once you start reading your biochemistry, you might feel, why am I reading this? Where is it correlated? Why am I going to read it in future? So there is beautiful correlations given between chapters. So I would highly recommend all of you to read this textbook. This is the textbook which I personally had read in my first year MBBS. It is the textbook of biochemistry by Satyanarayan. Coming to the last textbook, which is a very, very student-friendly textbook, which a lot of my batchmates had personally read, and they had actually scored distinction after reading this textbook. It is the textbook of biochemistry by R.M. Prasad. So it's a very thin textbook, very crisp textbook, and this is a textbook which is written by one of the professors in one of the colleges in Mangalore. So this textbook is a very beautifully written one, crisp topics, beautiful diagrams, and there are flow charts, and there are many diagrams which are handmade by the so for example, this diagram here, fatty acid synthase complex, this diagram is handmade. So you'll find a lot of diagrams which are handmade. So for writing answers in university exams, this book becomes the best one. R.M. Prasad's textbook. Okay. So this is about the theoretical aspect of biochemistry. That is 3 textbooks that I had mentioned: Vasudevan, Satyanarayan and R.M. Prasad. I personally had read Satyanarayan, and I had scored very good marks in biochemistry. So it's a personal request from my side not to neglect this subject in first year, as you would come to know about its importance in final year. Coming to the practical aspect of biochemistry, there is one standard textbook which every Indian follows. It is the textbook of Practical Biochemistry by Dr. Vilma D. Selva. Okay, so this textbook has each and every procedure what we are going to do, each and every practical what we are going to do in a brief, and also all the major and minor cases which are given to us as viva questions in our final exam. These questions are beautifully diagnosed, and the reasons behind our diagnosis are given very good in that. So I would recommend you all to read the textbook of Vilma D. Selva for practical purposes in biochemistry. So with this, we have actually concluded about the major textbooks what we are going to follow in our first year MBBS for anatomy, histology, embryology, physiology and biochemistry. Okay, there is something else which I would like to share with you all. I have read these textbooks and I have continuously been the college topper of my college. I was the college topper in first year, second year, third year and my final year MBBS. So it is my sincere advice to continue reading these textbooks. Okay, and there is something add upon which I personally felt would have been told by my seniors in my early days of first year MBBS. I could have increased or increased much more in my academics. So it is this textbook. It's a very small textbook. I'll tell you what is this. This is called as Companion of MBBS by Singhi Yatiraj. So you usually call it as Singhi. So what is this textbook? This textbook is actually having all the questions which have ever come in the university exams of MBBS of RGUHS University. So any subject you can open: anatomy, embryology, biochemistry. See, you can open it here. For example, this is the topic of axilla from your upper limb. Here you can see the long 10 marker questions which have been asked and in which year it was asked and how many times it has repeated, followed by the 5 markers, followed by the 3 markers and followed by the MCQs. So this is a textbook which gives you a very much upper hand on different topics. See, as a first year undergraduate, it is very difficult to think what kind of questions might come in exam, isn't it? I personally had faced this issue until my second internals had crossed. I was not able to figure out what kind of questions would come in the exam. So I wish I would have got this textbook before. So I would highly recommend all of you to buy this textbook, Singhi Yatiraj, Companion by Singhi Yatiraj, and also follow this textbook for your further endeavors in second year, third year and final year. This is absolutely going to be your companion. So with this, I would like to conclude this video. All the very best for your future endeavors. Goodbye.